Hello and welcome to the weekly Dartcast. I'm Ben the Groper Roper and you're listening to my darting teammate Alex the Spectacle Wonder 131 Moss. 180!
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. It's our Grand Slam preview special. I'm Alex Moss and as always delighted to be joined by my co-host from across the pond. He is the Richard Vainstra statistician, Burton, DeWitt. How are you doing, sir?
You mean I lose every tournament to a better statistician? That's probably accurate. I'm doing just fine though. How are you, Alex?
Glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm doing all right, thank you. Only feels like yesterday that we were recording our last episode whilst I was back home in Suffolk for a few days, back up north now. I'm not going to try and put the accent on, but I am excited for this show and I always look forward to these preview shows for the major tournaments because it means we're not far away from a week of darts to watch. The Grand Slam gets underway Saturday lunchtime and we're going to be joined by two of the 32 players competing in Wolverhampton over the 9 days. Stephen Bunting, the former champion of the world, and the American sensation Stowe Buntz, both in the same group as well. You're going to hear from both of them a little bit later on. But let's start the show. Let's get straight into our preview of the Grand Slam, and it is the penultimate stop on the road to Ali Pali. So how important is this event for players who might already have one eye on the World Championship?
I mean, it's just a minor, little nothing event, so who really cares about it? No, I'm just kidding. It's obviously very important. Although, surprisingly, only 3 different people have won this event and gone on to win the Worlds in the same year. Obviously, Phil Taylor did it. Obviously, Michael van Gerwen did it. And then just last year, Michael Smith did it. And the Michael Smith one is the one that really, I think part of why we're asking this question, how important is it? Because it was his first major after losing 8 major finals before it. And then he didn't win the Players' Championship final, but the next Sky Major, the second major after this, he added a second by winning the Worlds. And this obviously was a good prelude to it. Gerwyn Price, 1 year in the 4 years that he didn't win it, was the year he went on to win the World Championship. But obviously just being able to win the 2 previous years, long-form matches. Remember, it's best out of 31, quarterfinals, semifinals, finals. That's a very long match. That's potentially longer than the World Championship quarterfinal if you win it in 5 straight sets. But getting that big stage, long-form experience and getting that just before the World Championships is very crucial, especially considering there aren't that many long-form matches the rest of the year. There's the last 3 rounds of the World Match Play. There's the semifinals and the final of the World Grand Prix. And then there's the quarterfinals of this tournament. So it's important because of that experience, being able to play those long hour and a half matches on the televised stage that you just don't get many opportunities to do. Because once the World Championships comes along, from the 3rd round on, those matches are, relatively speaking, long. But beyond that, I don't think it's that much more important than any individual major in the rest of the calendar, or I should say on the rest of the calendar. It's obviously a huge event, and it's the only event where you can, well, other than the Premier League, where you can actually lose a match and still go on and win the tournament. You could even lose 2 in the group stage if you get lucky and 3 people go 1 and 2 and one of them sweeps the group, and you could then go on and win it. But it's one of the only tournaments where that's the case. But where it's also important is because it's part of that buildup. And I've been talking about how Peter Wright just always gets it right at this time of year. Michael Smith did that last year. Obviously, Michael van Gerwen historically got it right at every time of the year. Being able to play at your best in this tournament, or at least start lifting your game towards its best in this tournament, especially since it's a week-long event as well, will do a lot of wonders for getting into form for the World Championships. But that's about it. I don't think it has any individual importance for players going to the Worlds other than getting that long match experience and getting some confidence and lifting your game. That's about it. Otherwise, it's just another very important tournament in its own right.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like an important week coming up, and looking at the Grand Slam, its history, it's now a well-established tournament on the darts calendar. And I remember the very early days of this event going back to 2007, 2008 time when it was first shown on ITV. And back then, I didn't have access to Sky at home, so it was always an event I'd look forward to because it was one that I could watch at home. And I also loved the PDC versus BDO dynamic that it brought to the table. Back then, you were seeing the BDO players have some success, challenge the cream of the crop from the PDC. You had Scott Waits, who's now a PDC tour card holder these days, but 2009 he was making the final as a BDO player, and then 2010, a year later, he was winning the whole thing. But you fast forward 2023, we're a few years into this event where they've done away with the cross-code element. We don't have players from outside the PDC or their affiliate tours, so we don't really have that big storyline running through the event going into it. How will the BDO players get on against the PDC players? Now it is just a fully PDC event, and I think of the identity of the Grand Slam, it has changed over the years. And first of all, just getting into this tournament, qualifying for it, is an achievement in itself, and that's a discussion probably for the next topic, the qualification criteria for this event. But for the players that do make it, I do think they are going to look at it as a tournament in its own right, because there's a lot of money on the line. There is a chance to win a major event. But I do think some of them, and you look at previous years where a big run in Wolverhampton has set them up for Ali Pali in a month or so's time after that, and it doesn't happen every year. We don't see the winner of the Grand Slam then go on and win the World Championship. But as you say, 12 months ago, we did see Michael Smith break that major duck, win the Grand Slam, and then, in his words, completed darts, won the world, got to world number one. And I do think that Grand Slam win did take a lot of weight off Michael Smith's shoulders. And yes, he was good enough to win a world title. He'd been to 2 World Championship finals before then, but that without that major title to his name, I think it just made winning that title, I think it just made the job at Ali Pali that slight bit easier for him, because in the back of his head, he wasn't going into that tournament or the final with Michael van Gerwen still searching for that first one. So yeah, I do think it plays a part. It might not necessarily be about winning the title in the lead up to the Worlds, getting one of those big titles, but it might just be getting a bit of form behind them and some good results. And you think of this event as well, the qualifying for this event, some players qualified almost 12 months ago, and form over those 12 months, it does come and go. So to get some results over this next week could be exactly what they need to then go on and do some damage in the World Championship.
Well, the draw is now out for the Grand Slam. We ask this question every year. Everyone talks about it every year. Now it's time for us to answer it for season 2023. Which group or potentially groups are you picking as the group or groups of death?
Yeah, we do try and answer this question every year. And we do say every year there are some tasty looking groups in there, aren't there? And I think last year, I might be wrong, but I recall everyone was looking at the group with Luke Humphreys, Josh Rock, Scott Williams and Ryan Serland, thinking, how are you going to pick 2 players to come through that group? And at the time, Scott Williams qualified as the Challenge Tour winner, averaged 107 in his last group game and ended up going out of the tournament in the groups. And I think this year as well, a contender for Group of Death does involve the winner of the Challenge Tour, and that is Group B. You've got Berry Van Peer, who's just won the Challenge Tour. You've also got Johnny Clayton, the seed in that group, and he really has got his hands full there with not just Berry Van Peer, but you've also got Chris Dobie and Josh Rock, the player who I put in last year's Group of Death as well. And I think on form, if all 4 of those players are firing, that is a group where you could possibly put them in any order and say that's how it's going to finish up, and you wouldn't be too surprised. I think it is a group with a lot of potential, but as I say, if we see the 4 of them bring the best in one another, then I think this is going to be one of the groups to watch out for. And I'm going to go with that as my Group of Death just for that reason. But I do want to give a brief mention to 2 other groups as well that I'm sure many of our listeners will be putting as their answer to this question. And the first of them, Group E, you're going to hear from 2 of the players in this group, Stephen Bunting, Stowe Buntz on the show. They're joined by Peter Wright and Dave Chisnell, and that's another group that really interests me. And last week we were talking about Peter Wright becoming a major winner again, so he's going into this with a lot of confidence after winning that European Championship. But I think the other 3 players are going to be the same. You've got Dave Chisnell, who I'm starting to lose count how many titles he's won this year. I think it's 5 or 6. He won a title on the floor last week. Stephen Bunting, playing some of the best darts of his career, qualified for this event with 111 average in the last round. And then Stowe Buntz, a surprise package here, making his major debut. How is he going to take to that big stage, the bright lights? If he can find his feet quickly, that could well be a group that goes to the wire as well. And just lastly, My other group to give a mention to is Group H, the last one on that page. You've got Nathan Aspinall, Damon Heta, Ricardo Pietrexco and Bo Greaves. A very interesting group as well, and I should have mentioned it in the last question about preparation for Ali Pali, but those last two groups I mentioned, the seeded players, Peter Wright, Nathan Aspinall, this is going to be their last competitive tournament before the Worlds, as they're both not going to Minehead. So perhaps for those two, this event is more important for that tune-up, that last bit of preparation for the World Championship, and they've both been given two of the toughest draws in their groups, and along with Group B, my group of death, I can't really predict with any confidence the two players that are going to come through those groups.
Well, it sounds like we have fairly similar groups, but that's to be expected. There's usually at least one, sometimes more than one group that really sticks out. And I think Group B is definitely one of those, but I have a couple others that I want to talk about. And they're the next two groups in the draw, C and D. I'll start with C. I mean, Luke Humphries, okay, it's not the most recent major champion anymore because the European Championships was last week, and Peter Wright won his first major in almost 2 years, 8th overall. But Luke Humphries is still the most recent, newest major winner, and he's still one of the 3 or 4 favorites to lift this trophy in a week and a half, from the time we're recording this, in a week and a half's time, because he is one of the best players in the world. But he's been given a doozy of a group. I mean, Dirk van Dijvenbode now is the best player in the world who has still not won his first major title. Still hasn't won a stage event. He had 3 darts to beat Gerwyn Price in a Euro Tour earlier this year and didn't get it done. But he's just too good to not win a stage event. It could very well be the Grand Slam where he finally breaks his major and stage maiden. But at the same time, he has regressed just a little bit over the last couple months. He's not looking the same player since the summer break that he was before. It's not to say he's not a very, very good player, but he was looking like a player that could play his way into the Premier League early in the season. At this point, he is definitely in that second set of players, a second conversation, and he has a lot of work to do to still do it, but he's good enough. And maybe getting a tournament where he can go into the first match knowing that even if he loses, his tournament's not over, take a little pressure off and build into the tournament is exactly what he needs. Next player on it is only the player who topped the averages in the Players' Championship events this year, winning 3 of them and looking as good as he has looked since he was world number 2 and double world champion in Gary Anderson. Gary Anderson is back. He hasn't done it on television, but his performances on the floor have been as good as ever. He's absolutely live in this tournament, not just in this group, in this tournament. And then Steve Lennon, we haven't talked about him in a while. And we'll talk about him again later in this show when we talk about players who still have work to do to save their tour card. But it's been a renaissance season for him. He's really played well this year after what was just a horror year last year where he missed the World Championships and actually a couple really down years, basically since COVID lockdown started. Finally this year, Steve Lennon has bounced back, and he is no pushover in this group. If he's on his game, he can beat any of the 3 players around him. I think Group C is a very difficult group, but I also want to give a shout out to Group D. Don't really need to talk about Gerwyn Price, even if he's not the player he was, kind of like Dirk van Dijvenbode, for the first half of the year. He still is one of the best players in the world. Ryan Searle on his day can average 116. The biggest thing is that Ryan Searle's been a little bit, he's always been inconsistent, but he's been even more noticeably from one match to the next this year. And that's why he hasn't had the big major breakthrough that maybe at the start of the season we thought he would. Yes, he made the quarterfinals of the World Match Play. That was a big run, but that's the only time he's made it past the last 16 in a major this year. And the only other time he even made it to the last 16 was the World Grand Prix. But he has that ability. And on a short form match where you can just come out and throw 11, 11, 11 and suddenly be 3-0 up in 2 breaks, Ryan Searle can do that. And that makes him dangerous, especially in the group stage. Gian Van Veen, we've been talking about ad nauseum for the last couple of months, and rightfully so. And I'll just mention that Nathan Rafferty is a player who, on his day, we know is very good. He's he is the weak link in this group, but it's not a bad weak link. And the top three in this group are as good as the top three, or top two even, in any other group.
Well, those are our picks for the group of death. Get in touch with us. Let us know which group you're picking as the group of death for the Grand Slam. And we'll be back in a moment to talk more about the tournament. But before then, let's get to our first guest on this week's show. And he is a former champion of the world. He is going to be in the Grand Slam this weekend. Here's our chat with Stephen Bunting. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the former champion of the world and Mr. Bring Back the PDC, Stephen Bunting. Thanks for the time, Stephen. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for having me.
Great to get you back on, and we're talking just a few days before the Grand Slam of darts. You're back in the field this year after winning through the qualifiers. The draw yesterday put you in a group with Peter Wright, Dave Chisnell, Stowe Buntz. What was your reaction when you saw the draw?
Yeah, obviously it's a really nice draw. Obviously a really great group to be involved in. Obviously it's going to be tough, but I think if you're in the Grand Slam, no matter who you draw, it's going to be a tough draw. And I'm really looking forward to get going now, to be honest.
And it's been a little while since we last had you on the show. It was just after your run to the semi-finals of the World Championship. So going back to the start of 2021 feels like a little while ago now. You were playing in front of no fans. The crowds did return for the World Match Play that year. What was it like those first few games, having that full crowd back for those major events?
Yeah, no, obviously it's a vital part of our sport, having the fans there, and obviously playing behind closed doors. It felt a bit surreal, to be honest. It wasn't nice to play. There was no atmosphere. Although they had music pumping into the venues, it wasn't the same. But having the fans there, hearing the chants, obviously certain players getting booed and stuff, it was perfect to have them back. And yeah, I love playing in front of big crowds. I think I play my best darts in front of the biggest crowd. So, yeah, it was brilliant to have them back.
Yeah, great to see them back. In 2021, we did see you pick up your third PDC title on the floor, a first one since 2016. What did it mean to you to end that run, get back to winning titles again at the highest level?
Of course. I mean, every event I play in, I want to win the title. But it just goes to show how difficult it actually is. There's not many good players on the tour these days, and every 2 years it gets refreshed, and harder people come onto the tour. So yeah, no, it was brilliant to get that win, and obviously it's been a couple of years now since my last one, but I believe my form at the minute is better than I've ever played in my life, so I've just got to keep that up, and I'm sure tournaments will come my way.
Definitely, we'll come on to that recent form in a moment as well. And a few months after you got that title, it was another deep run in one of the majors, this time the World Grand Prix, where you ran Gerwyn Price close again. You did have that 2-0 lead before he came back. Did that defeat take a while to forget about?
No, not really. Obviously, I had a couple of really good wins at the Grand Prix, and unfortunately I come unstuck in the semi-finals, but I was still at the business end of the tournament. And I think in the last few years, it's always about looking at the positives of an event. Regardless of what happens, there's always positives to be taken from an event. So I think, taking the positives out of it, getting to another semi-final, and obviously great money on the ranking. So that was the big positives out of that. And obviously my form as well at the time was quite good. So yeah, I think obviously it's all a stepping stone of trying to push up the rankings, and that's what I'm trying to do still to this day.
And when we spoke before, we were looking back at that run you just had at Ali Pali to the semi-finals, and you said there was the possibility of that St Helens derby in the final, you and Dave Chisnell. We did get that St Helens derby in the next World Championship, and what a game you two served up for us. I mean, regardless of the result, you won it in the end, but how enjoyable was a game to play like that when you two were playing so well?
Yeah, no, I love playing Chizzy. He's one of my best mates, and he's one of the best players in the world, and there's no antics. We just get up there, we play our game, and whoever wins, we'll have an arm around each other. We'll have a couple of waters in the back room, and a nice chat, and it's always respectful between us. I think even a couple of months after that game, Chizzy was still talking about it, how well I played, and that's just how close we are as friends. And yeah, no, listen, that time I was lucky to to get away with a win, and he's beat me after that. So yeah, it's always nip and tuck between us as well. But like I say, we're always respectful no matter what the outcome is.
Glad to hear it. Well, let's get on to your 2023, and once again you were involved in the business end at Ali Pali, got to the quarterfinals, but away from the tour we saw you head out to America, and we had Ross Smith on the show a few weeks ago. He talked very fondly about your trip there with Danny Baggish. How did you find it, and the antics from Danny as well?
Oh, it was phenomenal, to be honest. I've always dreamed of going to New York and to get that chance, especially to share it with Ross. I think Ross is on my sort of wavelength. We're really, ever since that, we was quite close anyway and really good friends, but ever since that, he's like a brother to me. We're sharing an apartment in Minehead together, but yeah, just going back to New York and just the time we had. We did all the sightseeing stuff together. We seen the Statue of Liberty and we was up the towers. And Danny Baggish doing tricks on us, saying it was our birthdays and stuff. It was fantastic, to be honest. And just to share those special, I think it was like 10 days we was away, or 12 days. But to share that time with such nice people, it made it so much more entertaining and enjoyable, to be honest.
Yeah, it looked like a good time from the clips that we saw on social media. And one of the clips, we did see another song to add to your debut album of covers, which is surely on the way, a bit of Barbie Girl in the Taxi with Ross. We've seen Gold on the Euro Tour, but we've got to ask you, what is your go-to karaoke song if you had to choose one?
Yeah, I would say Stand Out by Gold, but yeah, it's difficult. I do like singing on the karaoke, although I'm not the best singer, but yeah, it's all about having fun, isn't it? I think that's why I like that so much, because it's just so enjoyable to be a part of it. But if I can make people smile doing the TikToks and singing a few songs, then I'll keep doing it, and hopefully everyone smiles with me and has a sing-song back, and I get some fans from it.
Yeah, I'll definitely join you on that. And back to the serious stuff then. A few months ago, we did see you notably change up your darts. You've gone up 6 grams in weight from 12 grams to 18 grams. As someone known for having probably the lightest darts on the tour, what prompted the change?
Yes, I was speaking to Target regarding a change of equipment, and we was discussing certain things about the barrel change, and they said, what about the 18 grams that they'd sent me? I think it was June last year, and I never really gave them much practice, because obviously I thought I was playing really well, and I thought to myself, you know what, I'll get them out, I'll dust them down, I'll have a nice little chuck with them, and we'll see how we go. And I hit 2 9-darters in the afternoon, and one about half an hour later, I missed double 12 for the third in the day, and something clicked in my mind, and I thought, you know what, I've never ever done that in my career, no matter what equipment I've used. So it just stuck. I went to Hildesheim for a tour event, and my case didn't turn up, and there was only one set of the 18 gram darts made. So I had to revert back to my 12 gram for then. I got someone to, because I had no darts, someone drove over to Hildesheim from Czech Republic and dropped me a set of my 12 grams off. And then I got to the semi-final, so I was in a predicament thinking, I got to a semi-final playing some great darts with the 12 gram. Do I stick with the 12 or do I go to the 18 when my case finally arrives back? And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, I got my case back. In the meantime, Target sent me some more 18 grams, and I've just gone from there, really. And yeah, I think the proof's in the averages and my form and the way I've been consistently playing, and I think, yeah, definitely justified that I've gone up that weight. Obviously, 6 grams for me is half a dart. It's a lot of weight, but when I was younger, I started off with an 18 gram dart, so I think, yeah, it was nice to get. I can feel something in my hand now, so it gives me that bit more belief, and there's a bit more purpose to the way I throw them.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, and I was going to say as well, when we last spoke to you on the show, we were talking about your game against Ryan Sterling. It was dubbed the heavy darts against the light darts. Ryan using the 32 grams, and you said that it was a fluke, but you hit a 180 with them, but they were too much of a workout to throw with. You've not gone quite as heavy as Ryan, but what has that been like, that adjustment in weight, especially as it's not just most players, they'll swap maybe 1 gram, 2 grams. You've gone, as you say, half a dart going up.
Yeah, no, for the first 3 or 4 days when I had them, it was really difficult, to be honest. My arm felt sore because I'm not used to holding something so heavy in my hand for that long, and I had really good practice sessions with them. obviously I don't need to throw them as hard because they're that much heavier, and the way they sit in the board, they sit up, and I'm hitting a lot more 180s, and my finishing's not been too bad. So yeah, I've just got to persevere. Like I said at the top of the show, I think my form's really good. I believe that I'm playing as well as I've ever done, if not better. And honestly, on top of my head, I think it won't be long before I win a title. But you can never really say that. But just on what I'm seeing on the practice board and what I'm doing in the Pro Tours and the Europeans and all the events I'm playing in, to be honest, and I've got that consistency about me. I've got the belief back, and yeah, I can say it because that's just the way I feel.
And that next title could well come a week on Sunday, the Grand Slam. Let's get back to that event. And I was having a look back through your records in the Grand Slam, and I was surprised to see you've only appeared in it 4 times since that debut in 2014. And the early days of the Grand Slam, it was PDC against BDO. When this event first started, was it one that you instantly looked at and wanted to be a part of?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, when I done really well in the BDO, that was the big incentive to be into the Grand Slam. Obviously, unfortunately now the BDO hasn't got that pull that it used to have, and it's slightly different, but it's still a ranked event. It's still one of the big events that I want to be involved in. I really like the venue. I love the tournaments, and yeah, I just can't wait to get started. Like I said, I think it's different for us as well. You're guaranteed 3 games in a group, and obviously the Grand Prix is different. You've got the double off, and it's just a unique tournament for us. I really like playing the group stages. I think obviously you're pitted up. It's great for sponsors who see the patches on your shirt all the time, and yeah, I'd love to do well in this event. And who's to say that I can't win it? I've got a tough group, but listen, I'm playing some great darts at the minute, and we'll just see how we go.
Definitely, and even before you won the Lakeside 2014, you'd already had a lot of success in the BDO, winning those 2 World Masters titles, the Zyderdown Masters as it was back then. But even that wasn't enough to get you in the Grand Slam, the BDO's invites. Did that frustrate you at the time that you weren't getting into the Grand Slam when you were probably one of the best players that the BDO had at the time?
It did when I watched it. I didn't really give it much thought when I was playing and trying to qualify and stuff, but obviously we had chances to be part of the UK Open, which was always a must for me to try and get into, and then obviously pit my skills against the best players in the world. That's what everyone wanted to do back then when we was BDO. I got my chance to play in the Grand Slam, I think, after I won the Worlds, and yeah, it was such a special tournament to be a part of, and like I said, the group stage makes it interesting. I really look forward to this event, and even though I qualified through the qualifiers, I think it's the hardest event to qualify for. Obviously, you've got to win in a tournament or come through a really tough field in a qualifier. So I'm proud now just to be part of it, and let me just try and make myself a bit more prouder and have a really good run.
Yeah, I was going to come on to those qualifiers, because you look at the list of players each year that miss out on the Grand Slam, and you've come close on a few other occasions to getting in. I think one year you lost with a 104 average, but we see every year the Euro Tour qualifiers going on. But how different is it in the room for the Grand Slam qualifiers with a spot in a major event on the line?
Oh, it's so tough, especially if things don't go to plan the first 2 days of the Pro Tour beforehand, and you can go in with a negative mindset. And obviously things didn't really go to plan for me. I know I made a board final and won my board, but I didn't feel like I was playing 100% the way I've been playing the last probably 6 to 9 months. Obviously I had doubts from last year when I missed doubles to beat Alan Souter to get into the event, and then the heartbreak of watching Alan Souter go really deep into the tournament last year. But I was proud of him. I'm a really good friend of Alan as well, and he had a fantastic run after beating me. I'd have been disappointed if he'd have beat me and then had a terrible run. So yeah, there's a lot of positives to take in. Obviously, when you're in a qualifier, it's always difficult. But like I say, I looked at that draw and I just thought to myself, I've got to play 300 plus averages to get through. Can I do it? And I was pretty close to doing that. I think there was only one that just slipped under the 100.
Yeah, not far off. 98 average, 101 average, then that incredible 111 average to beat Martin Schindler. We mentioned your group earlier. Obviously, you know all about Dave Chisnell and Peter Wright, but what about the other player in your group, the American Stowe Buntz. He's making a name for himself in North America this year. Have you caught much of his game?
Yeah, no, I've obviously heard his name, but I know he dresses a bit flamboyant, a bit like a Peter Wright, but I've not really caught any of his games. I will do a bit of homework, obviously. I can watch the first game with him and Peter, which I'll probably be keeping a close eye on, just to see what he's like and how he throws, and just to give me a bit of an insight of what to expect. But no, like I said, every play you play in the Grand Slam is going to be tough, and I've got a tough group in front of me, but I believe I've got the tools and the capability to go all the way in the tournament.
And just lastly, before we let you go, it's an exciting time for darts fans this time of year. What's it like this time of year? You're about to play the Grand Slam. You've got the players, Ali-Pali, right around the corner. How special is this time of year for a player who's going to be competing and trying to win all those free events?
Oh, this is the biggest time of the year for us. Obviously, this is where we want our form to be as good as it can be. Obviously, every tournament we send a message to all our opponents of how well we're playing. Everyone knows how well I'm playing. They can see it on the stats and stuff. But if I can keep the consistency up and obviously have a couple of good tournaments before the Worlds, everyone gears up to have a great Worlds, and hopefully I can have 2 good tournaments before that and go into the Worlds full of confidence again. So I'm just really looking forward to it. And who can't enjoy the Worlds with it being over Christmas time as well? I've got a holiday booked for January as well, so everything's looking really good at the minute. I'm on the practice board, I'm enjoying darts, and I'm enjoying life, to be honest, in general, and I just can't wait to get to the Grand Slam, and then we'll see how we go from there.
Happy days. Well, Stephen, always a pleasure to get you on the show. Thanks for giving us some of your time. We wish you all the best for the Grand Slam and what else is to come in 2023 as well.
No problem at all. Thanks very much.
Thanks again to Stephen for joining us. Now onto our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts, and it is related to the Grand Slam of darts. And our question to our listeners this week is, if you could make one change to the Grand Slam of darts, what would it be? And the options we've put on our poll are less spots in the tour card holder qualifier, the final and semi-finals to be on separate days, spots for the WDF, ADC, Modus, seniors, wherever you want to get them from, players from there, or the other option is change the venue. Which one would you go for?
Can I say no changes? I actually think, other than there not being a Mark Walsh in this tournament, it finally really is what it should be. I think you can quibble from year to year on who the invited players should be, whether maybe there should be a spot for the Nordic and Baltic champion, whether there should be at some point a spot for the African tour or a spot for the Central and South American tour. I don't think those tours are there yet, but I think they should be in the conversation to eventually get an invite. And maybe when that happens now, once that comes about, you go back to just having it just being the World Youth Champion and not the runner-up who gets an invite. And maybe you then consider whether the Women's World Match Play and the Women's Series both should be invited. Something like that might, in the long run, be cut back to just one spot so that it's one per tour. For right now, I don't think any of those are there. And in the end, it's what it should be. The 16, if there are 16, up to 16 televised finalists. If there's fewer than 16, you go Euro Tour Players Championships in that order. And then you have the 8 qualifiers. And while you could cut that number back to 4, and I think there could be an argument made for that, I like that there's not just a carrot to be played for in the qualifier, but an actually really big carrot, a really big chance to play through if you win 3 or 4 matches and get into this field. And if you look at the players who won through, it was anything but a weak group of players. It was really overall a fairly dominant list. 5 of them were seeded. Danny Knopper, the highest seed, he played through. Stephen Bunting, who you just heard from, former world champion. Ryan Searle, major finalist a couple years ago. Damon Head, a World Cup champion, one of the best players in the Pro Tour for a few years now. Brendan Dolan was also coming from the seeds. He's regressed a little bit this year, but he's still been okay, won a title last year. And then you throw in as well the unseeded players, Steve Lennon, who I just talked about, Martin Kleermacher, who I will talk about later, and then Nathan Rafferty, who I mentioned being in one of the groups of deaths. You didn't get a weak group of qualifiers. Sometimes you do. Sometimes there is one or two players who sneaks in that you don't expect. Rafferty and Kleermacher on current form probably weren't going to be expected, but still, you ended up with 6 players who were not surprises, who were in no way players who, when the day started, you wouldn't have thought had a good chance to get through. I don't see anything to change. Venue, it's been in Wolverhampton other than during the pandemic for years, and it's been a good place for it. I still think PDC should move some more events to Europe. And maybe that means this is the event that needs to go to the Netherlands or somewhere else. But it doesn't have to be this event. It just should be some other event that I think should be moved because it's saturated. But I think this is just a really good tournament. I think it's done really well. I think the format is correct. I think the format is right for it. And I don't see any changes that are necessary. So that's going to be my answer.
There we go. I think it's just our listeners that are being very picky. A lot of them getting in touch on our poll, and a big thanks to the guys at Condor Darts as well for the support. Thanks to everyone for getting in touch and having their say as well. And at the moment, 31% of our listeners are going with less spots in the qualifier. Leading the way at the moment, 35% want a final and semi-finals to be on separate days. 25% want the cross-code element to come back with spots for the WDF, ADC, Modus and so on. And just 9% are going with change the venue. And I'll read out a few comments that we've had from our listeners on social media as well. John Thompson saying less spots in the qualifiers is a given. Final/semis on other days is also a given. Don't know about other spots at this stage, and I'll get back to you on the venue after Saturday. So enjoy the darts on Saturday, John. Justin saying move the Grand Slam to Scotland, the Netherlands or Belgium. And Beak has come in and said qualifier should only be used to fill spots that haven't been filled by Pro Tour winners, not the other way round. It shouldn't be cutting off Pro Tour winners to allow for more qualifiers. 2 best of 31 games on the same day is madness for the semi-finals and finals. That's some of our listeners' thoughts. Do keep your thoughts coming into us. Let us know what you think. And I think for me, the one I'm going to go for is the final stroke semi-finals to be on separate days. And I think with the qualifier, we're going to see it come up on social media every year with this event. The criteria for this event gets talked about a lot. 8 players for the qualifiers in a 32-player field probably is too much, but as long as I can remember, there's been a qualifier for the Grand Slam, which I don't mind too much. But if it was up to me, I probably would cut it back a little bit and probably put it back to 2 spots instead of 8. And if we get to the day of the qualifiers and there's still some spots open, they've not been filled up by TV winners, finalists, Euro Tour winners, Players Championship winners, then you say to the players, happy days, there's more spots on the line for you to play for today for the qualifier. But I do think the big one for me is the scheduling, and we've spoke about it on the show before, and it's been in my darts wish list for this year, last year as well, I think, and it is to separate the semi-finals and final. And it's not to say there's not been any exciting finals in the Grand Slam. I think back to the Barney Van Gerwen 2012 final, the Price Anderson 2018 final was one that we're not going to forget for plenty of reasons, but I do think they have been few and far between, and especially when you look back to recent years, 3 of the last 4 finals, the losing finalist hasn't got to double figures in legs, and in a race to 16, it doesn't make for a thrilling final to close out the tournament. And the only opposite one to that is 2020, when it was behind closed doors and the schedule was a little bit askew. If we did have the final and semi-finals on separate days, and that ended up being a closer final. And how do you change it? For me, I think you have to introduce a Friday night session to kick off the tournament. You bring back every session back one, so the semi-finals would be Saturday night, the final would stay on that traditional Sunday night, and it does give the players a little bit of extra time to prepare. And just lastly, the venue. I did go to this venue, the Aldersley Leisure Village, I think it was called back then. It is a little bit out of the way. It's not as central as the Civic Hall where they used to play, but I'm not too worried about the venue. If they are going to move it, then I wouldn't really have too much of an issue with it, but they seem to get pretty decent crowds in throughout the week. So at the moment, I think that's probably the lesser of the the issues to worry about. And yes, now that I have picked for the schedule to change, I am fully expecting us to get a 16-15 last leg decider in the final a week on Sunday, and both players average over 105 as well.
Well, we'll see whether the PDC implement any of these changes or whether they'll go with my suggestion, which is to not make any changes at all. Now, there's only just 7 international qualifiers left to be decided for Ali Pali, including the PDPA qualifiers. But which players that have already qualified for the World Championships are you most looking forward to seeing next month?
Well, I've got to say, first of all, I didn't realise how close we are to the World Championship now. The 15th of December, it will be 5 weeks on Friday until that opening night. Michael Smith beginning that defence of the Sid Riddell Trophy. And after last week, those last Pro Tour events, we are pretty much getting close to a full house of players. I think it's close to 90 players of the 96 are penciled in, confirmed on that start line. And we've got the Europe Super League going on this week. Shout out to Nico Springer. I'm sure many of our listeners will have seen his 9-darter to win one of his group games, and did the old Gerwin Price, dropped his last dart before hitting the double 12. And shout out as well to his opponent, Manfred Bildel, who went 6 perfect darts against Throw in that leg and didn't get a shot at the 9-darter. So that's one of the spots to play for this week. But as for players that are in the field already from those international qualifiers, I think any list where you're picking out players that you're looking forward to seeing, you've got to include Lawrence Alargin on it, because he is just a fun player to watch, and whoever he gets drawn against in round 1, that's going to be a game that you're going to want to watch just to see his antics on the stage. He is a fun player to watch. And a couple other players, younger players, that I'm interested to see how they do. Of course, you've got to say Luke Littler, 16 years old, making his debut. Wessel Nyman, I said it before, he's gone a little bit under the radar this year with how well he's played after his time away from the game. Come back, won his tour card, got a spot at Ali Pali. That is some achievement. And looking down this list of players, I think it is already, without the other 7 players that are going to come into it, is a strong group of players. And I mentioned the player that topped the Asian Tour Order of Merit, Lawrence Alargin, but a word for a few of the other players that have qualified via that route, because this is the first year we've seen the Asian Tour come back since the pandemic, and we've seen a few players really make a name for themselves with that tour coming back. You look at Japan's Tomoya Goto, finished 2nd on the list. He won 2 titles, got to 2 finals as well. And one player who made a heck of a lot of finals, Paulo Nebreda, another player from the Philippines, made 4 consecutive finals and ended up appearing in 7 finals, won a title, which is incredible consistency at any level. And speaking of players being consistent on their respective circuits, I've got to mention as well Darren Pennell, 11 titles he won on the DPA Tour this year to book that debut at Ali Pali. And we saw a little glimpse of him. He has been on the tour before, but we saw him on the World Series over the summer, pushed Michael Smith to a last leg decider. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on a slightly longer format in that World Championship first round. And just lastly, because I've mentioned quite a few of the players, but 2 ladies that we've got. It's a shame we're not going to have 3 this year, but we do have Fallon Sherrick, Mikuru Suzuki at Ali Pali this year. And for Mikuru, it is 4 years since she played in this particular version of the World Championship. And some people might forget the night before Fallon made that history, beating Ted Evans, it was Mikuru who gave James Richardson that almighty scare that went down to a last leg decider between those 2. And we spoke on the show recently about the next milestone for the ladies' game, and I said possibly 2 ladies winning their first round matches at Ali Pali. Well, 4 years ago, 2020, we did almost get that, and who knows, maybe 4 years on, the same lineup of the 2 ladies, it could happen this year.
Very well could. We shall see. It's such a good list, and you've mentioned a lot of the ones that I did. You're going to hear in a second from Stowe Buntz. We talked about him a bit a couple weeks ago. Very excited to see him make his Ali Pali debut, particularly because he's found that way to lift his game to whoever his opponents are. I mentioned against how Alex Spellman this year, he's 5-0, even though in all 5 of those matches he averaged less than his opponent. He's beaten him all 5 times with a lower average because he's found ways to play his best darts and to hit shots at the right time. It's a much different thing to do that on the PDC stage, to do it on the World Championship stage, and he doesn't have that experience now. But I am curious to see on debut how he does, because I think he will still do better than his seasonal average in the CDC. Whether that will be enough, regardless of who he draws, is another question. But it is going to be something I'm looking forward to. Haupaipoa, we've had him on a few times. When we've seen him on the big stage in the PDC, he's been a force, and he had some good performances in the World Series events. I mean, the draw is going to matter big time, and it's going to be tough for all of the international qualifiers because all 32 Pro Tour qualifiers are very, very good players, and they just keep getting better year in, year out. But Haupaipoa is going to fancy his chances against almost anyone he might draw. Luke Littler coming from the development tour, we don't need. What do I need to say about him? Still only 16, but he is a player with a bright future. And to see him in his first PDC World Championship, I'm looking forward to. But I'm just going to then also mention, in no particular order, 7 other names. Lawrence Ilagan, Tomoyo Goto, Lungman Lok, Haruki Muramatsu, Paulo Nebrita, Reynaldo Rivera, and Sanjo Eric Soseng. Those are the players who qualified either through the Asian Tour or the Asian Championships. I've been saying for a few years now that the big Asian breakthrough is coming. And, we've seen Christian Perez win his tour card. Unfortunately, we haven't seen him be able to play all but one weekend because of visa issues all year. And that's sad because I think he would have had every chance to qualify through the Pro Tour or merit to the World Championships if he'd been able to play a full season. And hopefully next year we will get to see him play a full season because he's good enough. But he's not the only one. That Asian Tour is filled with world champion caliber players. And that's not an exaggeration because many of them have won soft tip world championships. And I do mean the plural there. And it means they are very, very class darts players. The only thing historically is that they've played soft tip more than steel tip. The PDC Asian Tour has increased the opportunity and the financial incentive to play more steel tip. And we've seen, especially before the pandemic, when we were having full seasons for a few years, the number of ton plus averages just keep going up. We're starting to see now that it's back to normal, it returned to that level. I think it's going to exceed that at some point. One of these years, one of those qualifiers isn't just going to win a match, maybe even upset a seed in the second round. One of those players is going to make it to the quarterfinals or semifinals because they are, as a group, 7 phenomenal darts players. And eventually, they're going to have their big breakthrough. I don't know which one, but I'm looking forward to seeing all 7 of them on the Ali Bali stage.
And now we'll move on to our final guest on this week's show. He is a player that we've just been talking about as one of those international qualifiers in the World Championship. But before then, he is going to be on that big stage this weekend, making his Grand Slam of Darts debut. Here's our chat with Stowe Buntz. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the debutantes in this year's Grand Slam of Darts, Stowe Buntz. Thanks for joining us again, Stowe. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me on.
Great to get you back on, and let's start with how I just introduced you. You are one of the debutants in the Grand Slam this weekend. It is your major debut in the PDC. We're talking just 4 days before it gets underway in Wolverhampton here in the UK. So how are you feeling as we edge closer to the weekend?
I'm actually starting to feel excited, nervous, anxious. The last couple of days have not really sank in just because I've been trying to catch up with family things before I go out of town, work-related things before I go out of town, and make sure everything's aligned before I fly over and hang out in England for 10-plus days. So today was my last day at work. I fly out early tomorrow morning, so I was able to, once I got off work, it started to sink in and set in that, man, this is really happening. I'm really getting ready to get on a bunch of planes tomorrow and trains and make my way to Wolverhampton for the Grand Slam. That's starting to get very exciting and very anxious.
And I'm sure seeing the draw as well yesterday would have made it a bit more exciting as well, because you've been put in a group with Dave Chisnell, Stephen Bunting, and first up, the world number 2, Peter Wright. So how excited are you, first of all, to face off with Peter on Saturday night?
I'm actually, that's very exciting to me. A lot of people have compared me to Peter Wright. There's talk about the North American Peter Wright. So I think that's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun for the crowd. I don't know which one of my shirts I'm going to wear Saturday, or what color pants. I'm trying to figure that out. So hopefully I'll be bright, and I know Peter will, and hopefully both of us can have a stellar evening and put on a good show. But yeah, yesterday when the draw came out, that made it real. That made it so real. And to play the former world champion, number 2 in the world, definitely started my anxiety.
Well, you mentioned the outfits as well. We spoke about it last time we had you on, partly inspired by Peter, and for the group stage, I don't know if you know, with the Grand Slam, you've got the joint walk-on, so it's going to be quite a colourful sight seeing you and Peter walk out together on Saturday night. I was going to say, have you got anything special planned? Are you going to try and reach out to him, maybe colour coordinate you two together?
So I thought about it. Unfortunately, I don't have any contact information for Peter, but I do have some people trying to work some avenues for me to reach out to him, maybe Thursday, Friday, and see what he's thinking. Maybe do a little collaboration or do something. Again, he's an entertainer. He's one of the best entertainers darts could ever ask for. So to have the pleasure to walk down that aisle up to the stage with him, hopefully the two of us will come up with something or do something on the fly that'll appease the crowd and have them cheering.
That'd be cool. Well, let's get back to the serious business then. And still only 3 months ago, it was when you made history, winning those 3 titles on one CDC weekend. And after that, I remember we spoke, you were at the airport getting ready to travel to Florida. You were straight off to another tournament. So it sounds like it has been non-stop darts since then for you.
It has. I went to Florida, played in the DPFL live event. Came up short in a few events, second place in a couple of events, top 4 in pretty much everything else. Fun event. It was a good follow-up to the CDC three-peat. Then I was able to follow it up with another weekend of darts with my kids because they wanted to go to a tournament. And then I took a couple weeks off until Indiana. Then I went to Indiana, solidified myself for the Worlds, and then I went to Continental Cup and managed to pull that out. Not quite sure how I did that yet, but I managed to pull that out and qualify for the Grand Slam, the North American Open, and the U.S. Masters. So yeah, it's been a very lucrative last 3 months.
Yeah, it certainly has. And one event that probably not as lucrative, but it caught my eye, definitely. One event online that you played in, I've got to give a mention to it because you took out 186 in 6 darts, and some people might be listening going, well, you can probably do it in less darts than that, but you went 180 and then with a 6, 3 double ones. Is that the most outrageous finish that you've done?
Probably the most outrageous finish, yes, that I've done live streamed or in person. Practicing, goofing off at league night, I have done other outrageous finishes like double 19, double 18, double 17 to finish out legs. If you go back and watch the video from that DPFL online match against Robbie Phillips, the 2 trip 20s hit, and I went ahead and threw the other one up there. He wasn't on and out. And then, of course, he chuckled and said, yeah, it's easy to hit a 180 when I'm not on a finish. And I said, yeah. Then he set himself up on a finish. And I said, well, for the fun of the sport, I can try 3 double ones. And he's like, nah, just go ahead and take it out. And I said, well, I'll throw one up there and we'll see how it goes. If one goes in, I'll just try to drop the other 2 right on top. And unfortunately, fortunately, that's exactly what happened. I went double one, double one, double one. And, it was fun. It's fun for the sport. It's entertaining. It got a lot of views, a lot of likes. Of course, it got a lot of comments. People saying it was funny. People saying it was stupid. People saying it was remarkable. All of the above. But for the fun of the sport and to put on an exhibition, I went ahead and tried it. So and then worked out in my favor.
Good times. Well, after that, the more serious stuff, it was back to the CDC. And you said to us after those 3 titles, it was only Alex Spellman mentioning that race to Ali Pali that you knew that you were in contention. So turning up for that last weekend, how were you feeling as you walked into the room knowing that there was all to play for?
I felt a little nervy. The guys that I was staying with, there was a group of 6 of us. staying at Airbnb, and I made sure if those individuals knew any of the points and who fell in the standings, to keep it to themselves. Do not mention it to me, because I didn't want to be throwing matches and thinking about, if I win, I get 4 more points. If I lose and so wins, they get. I didn't want to have that weighing in. I already had enough pressure to know that I needed to finish decent at least 1 or 2 of the events throughout the weekend to solidify myself a position for the World Championship. And I didn't really want to think down to the decimal point, I should say. My roommates did a good job. They kept me in the dark, and I was able to solidify myself a spot.
Yeah, we saw you get to a final in the second event of that weekend, more points on the board. So you said you didn't want anyone to let you know the state of play. So how did you find out that you'd done enough and you couldn't be caught for that spot?
Sunday morning, I came in, and unfortunately, my roommates did a good job, but other individuals that were at the venue came running up to me Sunday morning and said all I had to do was win my first round match against Jason Watt, and that solidified me a spot. Even if Dan Lobby or Soldier went on to win that particular event on Sunday, neither of them could get enough points to catch me. All I had to do was win the first round. So, of course, that weighed in on me. And if you go look at my stats, I was sweating, I was nervy, I was anxious, but I managed to squeak through and pull it out, and then play Jason Brandon the next round, and he beat me. But, so when I came out of the dart hall back to the lounge area, I was greeted by 20, 30, 40 people yelling, screaming after I played that first round match and won, because they obviously, myself and everyone knew that at that point it was solidified that I was going to the Worlds. Yeah,
a great achievement, and the achievements keep coming after that. You mentioned the Continental Cup. You won that one as well. You got the spot in the Grand Slam by winning that. But take away the Grand Slam and just the title itself. What did it mean to lift that trophy?
Oh, it meant a lot. That's definitely right now. It is probably It is. It's the best tournament that I've currently won, that I have under my belt. If you levy it against the other tournaments, it's number 1. Did I think I would get it this year? No. Was I confident my name would be on that trophy at some point? Yes. I was confident I would get my name on that trophy in the next 2 to 3 years. I can say that. But yeah, I squeaked through. I definitely gave my opponents plenty of opportunities, and they gave me plenty of opportunities, and I just happened to capitalize on the ones that they were giving me.
And off the board as well, we did see that you've signed a new contract with Shot, your manufacturer, and they've also put out a post on social media. You're on the lookout for a new darts nickname as well. So I've got to ask how that search is going so far, because we know that the Master has become available. I'm willing to offer my nickname of Zulu for a good price. Any other suggestions you've had so far?
I signed a new contract with Shot. Obviously, my level of play helped that. My new management team also helped that as well. I.e., I'm not my manager anymore. I was pulling double duty, player and manager. So now I actually have a management team, and they were able to help me out with that. And nickname, man, there's everything under the sun. I'm receiving message after message about nicknames. People are putting it on social media. I don't know. I've never thought of a nickname. It's never been something that's ever crossed my mind. So I'll probably decide on maybe 3 or 4, and then throw those 3 or 4 back on social media and have people vote on them, to be honest with you. And whatever the people, barring it makes some kind of sense and doesn't sound too crazy or out the box, that's probably what I'll end up going with.
Good idea. Well, we look forward to that, and obviously looking ahead, you have got the Grand Slam this weekend, and next week you've also got the World Championship in December. We're guessing you've still got the Modus on the cards as well, but is this going to be the first time you've been over to the UK, or have you been on these shores before?
I have never been to the UK. I've never been anywhere other than United States and Canada. I was supposed to play, actually, this week currently was supposed to be my week for Modus, and I was unfortunate and had to back out because it overlapped this Saturday. If I was to have made the finals day in Modus, I wouldn't have been able to participate in the Grand Slam. I will say Modus was very understanding. They definitely understood, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And they said just get my dates together when I want to return and send it to them, and they'll see if they can pencil me in. So I'm going to see how the Grand Slam goes, and then I'm going to see if I can make a split-second decision after the Grand Slam and possibly come over and do Modus the week before I'm supposed to play at the Worlds, to kind of get back over in England, get used to playing, get used to the time change, and use that as a practice session running up to the Worlds. If not, then I'll participate in Modus probably late January, early February sometime frame.
Excellent. Well, as you just said there, this is the first time that you're going to be in the UK. We know you're fond of a FaceTime with Danny Baggish. He spent a lot of time in the UK over the last few years. So have you sought any advice from any players for your trip coming over here?
No. Danny reached out a little bit, gave me a few pointers, and said if I needed any contact information to reach back out to him. I'll probably do that tomorrow while I'm in the airport. Or traveling, because just the responsibility of making sure my kids and my work was all taken care of before going overseas has been kind of taking up a majority of my time the last week and a half. So I'll probably start reaching out tomorrow and see if I can find a good pub, see if there's any top players over there that, whether they're pro, professional, amateur, that want to get together and maybe do a practice session Thursday or Friday.
Sounds good to me. Well, two more before we let you go, and we know that your fan base has grown quite a bit over these last few months. A lot more darts fans. They're going to be introduced to you over these next few weeks. So for you, how much are you looking forward to these experiences coming up, facing the world's best players in two of the most prestigious tournaments that the game has to offer?
Oh, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Again, qualifying for the Worlds, dream come true. Grand Slam, that was a bonus. That is a bonus. So I'll take that as a groundbreaking event for me to get my feet wet on what to expect on the PDC big stages. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the North American Open and the U.S. Masters next year. Those are two big events that on my home turf where I won't have to travel. Majority of the crowd will be behind me, so I am really looking forward to those, and if any other PDC events come my way, then yes, I will probably partake in them if I can. If my family and my work will allow me, then I'll be able to partake in them. But I'm just going to continue to take it one tournament at a time, and right now I'm just concentrating on getting over to England and playing in the Grand Slam, and then I'll concentrate on the Worlds next, and concentrate on each one as they come.
Sounds like a plan. And lastly, I think it was during that Continental Cup, we saw you do an interview saying about, I think you got asked about Q School potentially moving over here. Obviously, that's a huge decision to make. Is that something that's a long way down the line? Is it something you would like to do one day, or is it, as I say, you're focusing on tournament by tournament at the moment and taking it as you find?
So I'll answer the question for 2024 Q School. Not even remotely close to interested in playing in that. My daughter is a junior in high school. My son just started as a freshman in high school, and then I have two stepdaughters that are younger than that. So I still have a family that I need to make sure gets through school. They're provided for, and a wife that obviously also needs me to provide for them. So my work is my constant income. It pays for the bills. It provides for my family, and that is something I cannot afford to walk away from. So, and I really don't want to spend months on end overseas away from my family and miss crucial time with my family. Not saying anything's wrong with the players, anything that's wrong, and I know players do that. They sacrifice time with their family to go try to be a professional art player, and that's admirable. I commend them for that. That's why I show as much support for them as I do. But right now, current stage of where my life is, Q School is not in the near future. Now, if I can get some of these kids out of this house and they become adults, then yes, sir, I will definitely consider playing Q School.
Excellent. No, we completely understand that. Well, Stowe, it's been a pleasure to get you back on the show. Congratulations on getting that spot at Ali Pally and, of course, the Grand Slam coming up this weekend. And we wish you safe travels here over to the UK and can't wait to see you and Peter Wright side by side Saturday night walking up onto that stage.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks again to Stowe for joining us, and we'll finish up the show with the mailbag. And the first question, sounds like a very good name, comes from Alex Moss. Yes, I've put a question in for this week, and it comes off the back of, some people might have seen it, the PDC are hosting a night with the champions. They're going to have 10 of the 11 PDC world champions in attendance to celebrate 30 years of the tournament. But we're going to mix it up. If you could host your own darts night, Burton, which 10 people are you inviting as your special guests?
Well, there's only one way to go with this, and that's to pick 10 people that I want to set up 5 best out of 31 set matches so that it goes all week long. No, I mean, maybe it'll just be best out of 3 legs. But I decided to try to get 5 groups of players and people that I want to see play each other. And starting out, I have to start with the obvious choice, and that's Mark Walsh. And who better for the GOAT to play than myself? I'd be my own guest. I'm playing Mark Walsh. I'm losing 2 legs to 0. I know it. I'm going to be lucky if I can even let go of the dart because I'm going to be so nervous and so excited. But I want that opportunity, so I'm inviting myself, and of course, I'm inviting the GOAT, Mark Walsh. Next, I'm going to invite Dan Dawson, commentator extraordinaire. Also knows he throws a little darts, but I figured, who should I get him to play against? I think he would love that opportunity to go on the stage and play Scott Rand. And that's my next guest. So Dan Dawson and the return of Scott Rand. I don't know who's going to win that one. I've seen Dan Dawson throw some decent stuff. I don't know if Scott Rand's even picked up a dart in the last decade. So maybe that'll be an interesting matchup. But the next one, I have 2 more names. This is going to be a walk-on derby. They both have the same walk-on, and that's Menser Sulovic and Anne-Louise Peters. I don't know what's happened to Anne-Louise Peters. She, every now and then she'll suddenly show up. She'll qualify for Lakeside. She'll win a couple matches, make the semifinals, and then we don't see her for a few years. Then she does it again, and we don't see her for another 7 years. But she's going to come in and she's going to battle Menser Sulovic, best out of 3 legs, to determine who gets to keep the walk-on song. Next 2 on the list, it's all about the Bants now. I'm inviting Wayne Mardell. And no better person for Wayne Mardell to have to play on the big stage than Gian Artut. So those are my next 2. I think Mardell has just texted me saying he is turning down the invite, unfortunately. So I guess I have a spot to fill. I'll figure out who I'm going to fill that with now that he is shied away from Gian. And then last but not least, the last 2. And boy, you're going to look bad if you don't have this same 2. I'm inviting you, Alex. I want you there as one of the guests of honor, and you can go against our producer, Hannah. And since Wayne Mardell does not want to play Gian Artut, again, I guess we can invite Matthew Kiernan as well.
Oh, I like it. Some great picks there. And do get in touch with us as well. Let us know your 10 people that you're inviting in your dream darts night, I guess. And for me, I've got a slightly different way. I guess yours is probably a little bit more realistic, actually getting Scott Rand to turn up for this event. I've got a few people that are sadly no longer with us. I've gone dead or alive for this one, and I've included 2 legends, as I say, sadly no longer with us, but Eric Bristow and Jockey Wilson. They would have some incredible stories to tell, and I'd love to hear them in person as well. And I sometimes get asked by people, if you could have a guest on this show, past or present, who would it be? And those 2 names come up quite often. I'd have loved to have chatted with Eric or Jockey on the show. If this show would have been round back then, that would have been certainly a good time, that golden era for darts in the 1980s. And I'll add in Sid Waddell as well as my 3rd guest. For me, the best ever commentator in darts. And again, he's someone that's going to have a lot of stories to tell. 2 other legends from that era I'm going to add in, and then I'm going to go to a bit more current times. I'm going to add in Cliff Lazarenko and Bobby George. Cliff, someone that we've tried to get on the show a few years ago now, but he said that the darts is in his past now. He wants to move on, and if we were able to change his mind via this dream scenario, that would be great to get him on. And Bobby George, for me, one of the best parts of the seniors the last couple of years is seeing Bobby George back on the TV. He's always someone that that makes you laugh. He's got some funny tales to tell as well. So Bobby George is in there, which brings me to the halfway point, and I can't believe I've not mentioned the GOAT yet, so we'll get him in. Coast on pay, he's going to be there, and we can't have a darts night without the matchstick, can we? And I'll add in my favourite from the current era, Peter Wright. Would be good to catch up with him as well. So we've got, 3 more to go. We'll add in good friend of the show, Andrew Sinclair. We've had a few trips away for the darts, and he's always good company, and we can share a Guinness or two after the show as well. And I should say as well, I forgot to mention, I did have this down on my notes as well to save face a little bit. This night of the darts is going to need 2 co-hosts, so that is going to be me and you, Burton. I've got you in there, and we'll have Matthew Kiernan. He'll have a mic as well in the crowd for the fans to ask their questions to some of our guests, and our producer Hannah, she does all the hard work behind the scenes, so we'll have her there for the night too, doing the producing for us as well. And my last 2 spots, number 9, is going to the architect, Dave Parletti. He's a big supporter of the show over the years. I hope he is keeping well. Be good to see him as well, and I know he'd love to meet some of those legends as well. And finally, unfortunately, he's not getting an invite to the Modus League at the moment, despite all of our requests, so he'll have to make do for now, and I'll add for now, for an invite to my darts night, and that is the one and only Jamie Robinson. He is my last guest. What a man, what a player.
And what a 2 nights of darts those 2 lineups would be. Now, our last question comes from Charlie Gray, and that's, of the players outside the top 64, although I'm going to include some in it when I answer it, who are in the biggest danger of losing their PDC tour card?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Charlie. And I think if you're outside the top 64, particularly at this time of the year, and you're not on that first year of your tour card, then you're going to be in danger, aren't you? And I think it applies for quite a lot of players. And okay, all's not lost. We spoke about it last week. We spoke about it briefly as well this week. There is that tour card holder qualifier at the end of this month. There is going to be 4 spots up for grabs for Ali Pally. So that is your last chance to get into what is the most financially lucrative tournament there is. And a few wins could turn your career around, and you could avoid that trip to Q School. But it is obviously easier said than done. But looking down the list of names that we've got currently outside that top 64, and I think one of the biggest names that is set to lose their card, and sadly it has been looking that way for a little while for him now, is Devon Peterson. His drop off in form over the last few years, going from a Euro Tour winner, I think he was semi-finals at the European Championship, and going into that World Championship, a dark horse for quite a lot of people going into that. So to go from that to now being outside that top 64, it has been a tough period for Devon. And you go from at the end of 2020 going into 2021, I think few people would have predicted him to have the drop-off that he's had. But he's a player looking pretty much likely he's going to lose his tour card unless he can get through those qualifiers. And to then someone still in the early years of their career, Rusty Jake Rodriguez, he came onto the tour with his card last year, 2022, and a lot of promise after the 2021 that he'd had, not just on the development tour, but even on the pro tour as well. He was getting some results. And again, he's someone that's going to have to win through those qualifiers to stand a chance of keeping his card. And just looking at that post-World Championship order of merit at the moment, provisionally, you mentioned about players that are currently in that top 64. You've got one who's in there at the moment, Steve Lennon. You've got Nathan Rafferty just outside. They are provisionally 65th, 66th on that post-World Championship order of merit. They're both going to be in the Grand Slam this upcoming weekend. So an important event coming up for those 2 players to try and push over the line, keep their tour cards. And the 2 players below them on that provisional order of merit, they contested a final just a few weeks ago on the Pro Tour. Radek Sagansky, Connor Scott, they're probably not as much in danger because they have qualified for Minehead and Ali Pally. So they are going to give themselves a couple of chances to save their tour cards with a few wins in either of those events. And players that, like I mentioned with a few players earlier, that do need to win that qualifier to get to the Worlds. You've got Danny Anson, a title winner on the Pro Tour last year. You've got some other established names, Darius Labanauskas, Jeff Smith, Scott Waits, Richie Bennett, and one player that I want to mention just lastly, and I know you've mentioned it in the past on the show, Burton, about players that if they could have a 3-year tour card instead of 2 years, they probably would kick on. And I think a player that goes into that bracket is George Killington, because I think he's someone that has started to find his feet in recent months. But again, he's someone that is going to need some good results over the next few months to keep that tour card. So a lot of players in that list that need to get something in that qualifier or in one of these major events before the end of the season, or they'll be heading back to Q School.
Yeah, I had Killington on my list as well as one of those 3-year tour card players. Also throw on Jules Van Dongen, who did enough to just get into the World Championships and the Players' Championship finals, but still would need to win multiple matches at both of them to save his card. But a player that over the last few months has looked a far superior player to the player he was for the first 20 months as a tour card holder. And, there's other players like that are these that grow into their tour card, and that's why I call them the 3-year tour card holders. And many of them do come back and win back their card. The first person that I used that phrase about was in fact Matters Razman. Now he's in the top 32 after having to go back to Q School and winning the card back at that first attempt. He's obviously not in any danger of losing his tour card this time round. But there's a few others. You mentioned, Radek Zagansky and Connor Scott. They still though have quite a bit of work to do. If you look right now, if you add in the prize money for the players that have qualified for the 3 majors so far, the cutoff looks fairly low. It looks 68,000. That's just one win for Radek Zagansky at Worlds or for Connor Scott at Worlds. But all those players right ahead of them, other than Nathan Rafferty, who's just outside, are also in the World Championships. So if Kevin Dotes wins his match, and Mario van den Bogarde wins his match, and Steve Lennon wins his match in the first round of the World Championships, even if they go out the first round of the Players' Championship finals, winning a match at the World Championships by itself would not be enough for Zagansky or Scott. They would need to win another match against the seed, or they would have to win a match or two in the Players' Championship finals to catch up. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done, because I think 80,000 pounds might not even be enough, somewhere in that vicinity. You look, right now, 80,000 pounds is what Martijn Kleermaker would be on for qualifying for the Grand Slam. Well, if he goes and beats Fallon Sherrick or wins another match and gets out of his group, that's another 3,000 pounds. That moves the total up to for his total up to 83,000. Suddenly you might be thinking Mervyn King on 81,750, assuming he does not win through the PDPA qualifier, is not safe. It could very well be the case with just a couple wins here and there by Ian White, Martijn Kleermaker, Kevin Dodes, and a couple other players, that even Mervyn King on 81,750 is not safe. And he's been an ever-present in the tour since the tour card started in 2011. And the amazing thing is that 80,000-pound number, that could end up being safe. That could be enough. It could be that Martijn Kleermaker winning through that qualifier has done enough. But I want to put that in perspective. The first year of tour cards was 2011, 12 years ago now. At the end of the year, top 64, like it is now, kept their card. You know what 80,000 pounds would have put you in the rankings after the 2011 season? One spot behind Peter Wright. One spot ahead of Steve Beaton. Peter Wright at world number 29 then. It's a different time, surely. But that was top 32 in the world, top 29 in the world. That's where Peter Wright was. Now, that might not be enough to save a tour card. But I'll mention just a few other names. You saw Scott Waits had a good run in the last Players' Championship final, came within a match of getting into not the last Players' Championship event, came within a match of qualifying for the Players' Championship final, a couple matches of qualifying for the World Championships. It was only a second quarter final in the PDC, but just another win or two would have made a world of difference, because we'd be talking of him on that same level as Radek Zagansky and Connor Scott. Instead, we're talking he needs to go to the PDPA qualifier and then win a few matches at Worlds. Darius Labanauskas, it wasn't that long ago that he was throwing a 9-darter on the World Championship stage of making the quarterfinals. He's not had a good year. He's played better over the last few weeks than he has for the last couple of years. But it seems very likely that he's going to Q School, and there's plenty of others even further down that you mentioned. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. But there's a lot of players who still have a lot of work to do. And even Mervyn King might not be safe. Anything else for this week?
Well, as always, we have to say a big thank you to our guests for joining us on the show. Thanks to Stephen and Stowe for their time. May the best man win when they face off in the Grand Slam. Thanks to our sponsors as well. Thanks to Condor Darts for sponsoring our question of the week. Thanks to Darts Corner for their support. They are the world's #1 online darts retailer, Dartscorner.co.uk. Give them a look for all your darting needs. They are the only place you need to go. And lastly, thanks to everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed our preview of the Grand Slam. By the time you're listening to this, there is not long to wait until it all gets underway. So I'm not going to steal your sign-off, Burton, but I will say that once they're finished doing what your sign-off suggests, then they can follow my lead and enjoy the darts.
Enjoy the darts indeed, but nope, you do have to do my sign-off first. We still have a few more days this weekend. It'll be wonderful, as it always is. One of my favorite tournaments. The group stage aspect adds a little bit of something that isn't in some of the other events, but you'll have to hang tight for that. But it's about the end of the hanging tight for a long time. There's plenty of darts over the next couple months.